Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Health Committee meeting for the County of Renfrew. It is April 14th, 9:30, the appointed hour, so I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone. We'll get through this as expeditiously as possible. It is far too nice a day to be sitting indoors. With that, I will inquire first, Ms. Johnson, has the roll been called?
Yes, it's completed.
Thank you very much. The next order of business, are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest, and if so, the general nature thereof, please? The chair recognizes none. Thank you. Can I have a motion, please, on the adoption of the minutes? We'll do them in sequence. First, we will adopt the minutes from the March 17th regular Health Committee meeting. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Grills. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll follow that up with the minutes from the special meeting on March 31st, 2021. Can I have likewise a mover? Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Bennett. Again, any errors or omissions? All in favor? Those minutes are carried too. Thank you. We do not have any delegations this morning, so without further ado, Ms. Sheedy, if you could take us through the long-term care report, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning to all of Health Committee. The long-term care report starts on page 2 of your package. Items number 1 and 2 are the resident statistics as of the end of March for each of Bonnechere Manor and Miramichi Lodge. I'd like to draw your attention specifically to the year-to-date occupancy rate because I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Bonnechere Manor is over 97% and Miramichi Lodge is just under 95%, and that's a year-to-date average. And again, reminded that first asterisk is referring to the fact that we are not required until at least until the end of August of this year to meet that 97% target. The double asterisk refers to the fact that the ministry and the province has put the respite program on hold, and that remains in effect at this time. Item number 3 is our regular update on the pandemic. The first bullet point, as you well know by now, that the lodge was unfortunately in an outbreak situation as of February 21st, declared over on March 29th. So that was a little over 5 weeks. At this point, we're in the thank you phase, and in all sincerity, great thanks to residents and families for their trust and cooperation as we manage that outbreak. I think that we were very transparent, and I think residents and families and staff appreciated that. To the staff and the management, I cannot thank them enough, and I know you have on your behalf. And the warden wrote a lovely letter to each of the staff last week, which I know was very much appreciated. As well to Dr. Cushman and his staff. As you know, we met with them on a daily basis, including weekends and lots of impromptu evening meetings. And Claire Ludwig from formerly the Lynn, now Ontario Health, was incredibly supportive and made some great recommendations to us, such as engaging the IPAC regional team, which we greatly appreciated. The Ministry of Health was present on those daily meetings, and certainly last but not least is Mr. Morrow, yourselves as a Health Committee and all of County Council. And at the risk of singling anyone out, I do feel inclined to single out our chair and our warden because as Mr. Morrow knows, they were engaged in daily emails with me, sometimes good news and unfortunately sometimes bad news, but always connected and always supportive, and appreciated that ongoing advice. The second bullet point speaks to the surveillance and symptomatic testing. It can be related back to goal number 4 from our strategic plan in terms of optimizing technology. And that's simply to make sure that Health Committee knows that the rapid antigen testing is now fully implemented at Miramichi Lodge, because of course it had to be paused during the outbreak. The next bullet point is related to what the ministry is calling the path to recovery. We all know that's a part of any emergency, timing of which is, unfortunate right now, given that things are worse than they have ever been. But for various reasons, the government has decided to change the definition of an outbreak in a long-term care home. And it is bolded there in your package. So it has gone from being basically a positive result, whether it's amongst resident staff or a visitor to your home, to having to be 2 or more cases, and it has to have been believed to have originated or acquired in the home. Initially it gave me a little bit of concern that we were lightening up at this time when we know there are variants of concern and, our number of cases are higher than ever. But I am comfortable with the fact that the suspect outbreak definition has not changed. So that remains basically anybody with one symptom or potential symptom of COVID. And what that means in the long-term care homes is that we treat them as if they are positive until ruled out. So I have some assurance there. There's no doubt that, a significant catalyst to this was the situation back on April 7th, a warning in terms of the impact to acute and critical care with the number of cases rising across the province. And now, as it is April 14th, we know that to be a fact. And again, I'll come back to this in a minute on the last bullet point. The government also took the opportunity to make sure that while, all homes are paused in the province because of the lockdown features or requirements, being that only staff and essential caregivers are permitted into the home, to make sure that we're doing everything to enhance and maintain the quality of life for our residents. So with the respect to the 3 bullet points that are on page 5, I can assure you those have been in place at both of our homes on an ongoing basis, only paused at the lodge again during the outbreak period. And then finally, there is work going on with respect to the recovery, such that includes a committee that the government has said is going to be very action oriented, and we'll continue to bring you information on that as we receive it. The next bullet point is the occupancy targets that I referred to earlier. And again, the point being that Bonnechere Manor is already over the non-COVID requirement, and the lodge will be soon once they're able to readmit. They have been readmitting, but once they catch up during that 5-week pause of the outbreak. The next bullet point relates to the prevention and containment funding. This is related to our strategic plan goal number 1 and the advocacy that you have been doing as a committee, council, and all the associated work through the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, AMO, etc. And the formula and the calculation for it is outlined on the top of page 6. But I'll cut to about 2/3 on the page. So Bonnechere Manor was eligible in this 12th allocation of $140,800. Reduced slightly because the government has anticipated will be underspent by about $35,000. However, this information came before the actual end of the ministry year being March 31st. And given that we're only halfway through April, we haven't, submitted all of our costs. So I am confident that that number will be smaller. And then similarly with the lodge, you may recall that the lodge didn't implement screeners and screening coordinators as early as the manor did. Again, some of it is related to the outbreak. And again, remembering the ministry year still includes January to March of this calendar year. And so at this point, the ministry records are showing that the lodge is underspent by a little less than $350,000, and so that the lodge won't be receiving the allocation for the month of March. But in reviewing the financials with the administrator of that home, he is confident that the costs that will be submitted to the end of March will bring us to about half of that. So we're expecting that we'll be able to recoup about 150,000. And then finally, the government has indicated that they will continue to provide this funding on a monthly basis throughout the fiscal year of 2021-2022. And then the last thing on that item, Mr. Chair, is just something that came up since the report went out, and that was on Friday morning, the government convened an emergency meeting with all long-term care providers in the province with what they're calling a call to action. And so it is simply, as we've talked about earlier, the impact to acute and complex care with respect to spaces available in hospital. And I know you're all aware of it in terms of people having to be transferred out of their area to other areas to access ICU and ventilators, etc. But the request for long-term care was specifically to admit wherever we can. And so I wanted you to know that our 2 homes were already there, and we have kept that up throughout the pandemic. So it has not been an issue. But just simply to say that the discussion that happened at that meeting was as much to the call to action, but also what were the barriers to homes admitting residents through COVID. And so a number were identified. The government has indicated anything and everything is on the table. So I do anticipate we will hear and see some changes in the near future. And so again, we'll continue to bring those to you as we're aware of them. Item number 4 on page 7 is the National Long-Term Care Standards. Dr. Sinha, who's a name very familiar to us, is leading this. So it's great to see. I will note though, for those homes that are accredited, we already have national standards. And of course they exceed our ministry baseline requirements. And as you know, it is voluntary in the province of Ontario, and the 2 homes that you operate exceed those national standards such that they have the highest award from Accreditation Canada, the exemplary standing. You know, by way of comparison, in the province of Ontario, accreditation is mandatory there, but as we know, that really didn't provide a lot of protection as it relates to the pandemic. So, you know, certainly my opinion as a staff person is that anyone thinking national standards would have been the answer to preventing the tragedies in long-term care. I think we would be fooling ourselves. It comes back down to funding. And I think the place to start with that is that long-term care needs to be included in the Canada Health Act as acute care is, and that will ensure better funding to the provinces on an ongoing basis. Item number 5 is the transfer order notices. So as we expected, the LHINs are evolving into Ontario Health. So all of those documents that you signed last month or approved to be signed by the warden last month under the LHIN, and they will continue to be on paper under the LHIN. We don't have to re-sign anything, but they will be considered to be with Ontario Health. Item number 6 is an update on Network 24, our Ontario Health team. And you will know that we have an addendum to that. So for now, I will just point out the fact that the appendices in your package, updates number 1 and 2 are on page 15 and 16 of your package. The appendix number, the next one, the full application, is really the template. Were a few, you know, additions from Network 24, but it's at that point in time, it was pretty much a template, and that's on page 18 of your package. And then on page 31 is the current inventory of current collaborations that exist within Network 24. So I'll just stop there and then finish that discussion when we move to the addendum. So item number 7 is the provincial budget. I won't go through this in any detail because all of these were previously announced and therefore in previous health committee reports. So the 4 hours of care that you're well aware of, we're waiting on what does that mean on an allocation per home and when will the money actually flow? Those are obviously the 2 magic questions. Level of care funding, actually this was news. We received a 1.5% increase, so that's great news because we did not budget for anything. However, we do not have any information or even a timeline on when we will get our CMI funding, which you know impacts nursing personal care program and support services, the 2 biggest parts of our budget, and probably more importantly, the ever farcical reindexing process. So I'm not going to get too excited about the 1.5 at this point because we could have a net negative overall increase. So we'll just hold on that until we receive that information. The stabilization funding is the prevention and containment that we referred earlier. The personal support worker, you're aware that the government has extended the $3 an hour wage enhancement for PSWs until the end of June. Which is nice for PSWs. It's not so nice for their other team members that are working alongside them. That message has been conveyed to the government loud and clear. So I'm not sure what will happen there. But in terms of just the shortage across the province, country in North America in PSWs, we have a net increase of 2 additional intakes, as you know, through Algonquin College in our region. So that's 2 in addition to the standard on-campus program, although it's virtual right now at Algonquin College, and the on-site program at Bonnechere Manor. So we have a total of 4 intakes, 2 new ones in this current calendar year. So that's good news. The funding for IPAC and capital gets a little confusing because the names are very familiar. So there are 2 streams. One is IPAC capital funding, and one is what they're calling minor capital funding. And you'll recall when this government first came to power, we were getting structural compliance funding, and they changed that to minor capital, and only some homes are, the homes that were eligible for structural compliance are currently eligible for minor capital, the second part of this funding package. So for our 2 homes, Bonnechere Manor being the older home redeveloped in 1995, 26 years ago now, that we are eligible. The lodge, unfortunately being built in 2005, is not eligible. So if you flip over to the table on page 10, you will see the amounts that each home is eligible. And then I just wanted to remind you that there was that provincial/federal funding available specifically for HVAC systems. Well, it was for lots of infrastructure, but for long-term care, the priority is for HVAC systems. And so each of the lodge and the manor have capital requests that you've approved through our capital budget process approval in their budget that we also applied through this funding. We were to be informed by the end of March. We have not received that indication yet of who's been successful and who has not. So hopefully we will be, but all of that to say, any opportunity to make the home safer as it relates to infection prevention and control, we will do. As it relates to specifically HVAC, both of our homes meet or exceed the current or the proposed standards for HVAC. The only differentiation being that the manor system is old and outdated, but the fact remains we do have air conditioning throughout our homes, and specifically in the resident home areas and in the resident rooms. But as you know, you've approved significant dollars on, we're in our 3rd year to get that ramped up to match the size of our building. Moving on to the infection prevention and control, staffing and training, again, some additional dollars announced, but we don't have the specifics on a per home basis just yet. And on the rapid testing, of course, the government covers 100% of the cost of the actual tests. In terms of the staff doing that, this leads over into our third-party surveillance item bullet point. And you'll recall in January and February, we had that announcement out of the blue that all homes were mandated to hire security guards as third-party screeners in our homes, even though we'd been doing screening for over a year or almost a year at that point. And as a result of significant pushback and advocacy from various groups, the government rethought that idea, and it is no longer a requirement as long as it is a designated third-party person. And so what you've approved for both of our homes through business cases is that we've hired new staff on a temporary basis specifically for that. From January to the end of March, we were able to charge those costs to the security guard funding because it met the intent of that. But the government has announced that funding will end at the end of March, and we will charge it to the emergency prevention and containment funding. And then last but not least is the announcement regarding the redevelopment and long-term care beds for our region. The Grove in Arnprior has been approved for 32 new beds, and Four Seasons in Deep River has 86 new beds, and 10 of their current allocation of beds will be redeveloped. Moving on to number 8 is really just, it is strictly an information item at this point. The government's allocated some funding in follow-up to the Gillies inquiry for the medication safety programs in homes. We know that there'll be a base amount of $50,000 over 3 years. What we can charge those that funding to, we don't have any of those details yet, but we will bring that to you when we receive them. Next is the unaudited financial statements for the year ending 2020, and that is appendix number 2, starting on page 33 of your package with Bonnechere Manor. And I happily turn it over to Mr. Foss to walk you through that.
Morning, Mr. Foss. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning to the Health Committee. So beginning on page 38 of your package is the financial statements for long-term care homes as at December the 31st of 2020. Page 38, I guess I'll draw your attention to, shows sort of our grand total of revenues for Bonnechere Manor at $17.5 million and a surplus generated from those revenues of $1.1 million. Just before I talk a little bit further about the surplus, I just want to draw your attention several lines just above that number. You'll see the very last provincial revenue accounts, one of them provincial one-time funding for COVID at $1,637,000, a line just above that, and I guess I'm going to call that related somewhat to our pressures related to COVID. It's IPAC funding, or infection prevention and control funding, of $95,720. We used in Bonnechere Manor that IPAC funding, as Shelley had mentioned, to support HVAC upgrades that were taking place in 2020. That project is not yet complete, but we're using that funding to support that project. So of the $1.6 million in COVID-related funding, Bonnechere Manor had additional payroll costs, which would be salaries and benefits of $685,000. We have very specific program funding for the pandemic. That would be $4 per hour for all frontline staff on the initial program, in addition to a supplementary pandemic support for our PSW employees $3 an hour, and that took place from October until December of last year. The total of our pandemic payroll costs were $723,000. And then similar to the discussions that I had yesterday, all departments had the ability to track and record all COVID-related expenditures using a separate and distinct general ledger tracking account. And for all of Bonnechere Manor, their COVID-related expenditure payments amounted to $227,924. So in total, that would represent the $1.6 million of funding that we used to support COVID. So back to the discussion then around the surplus of $1.1 million. If you were to add up the salary and benefit costs for all departments within Bonnechere Manor, they would arrive at about $13.5 million against a budget of $12.7. So that variance, if you will, of $788,000 in overspending has to be reduced by our COVID-related salary and benefit costs of $1.4 million. That leaves us about $620,000 underspending in all departments for Bonnechere Manor. And so I'm sure that Shelley could speak to this in greater detail if you wish, but essentially we were challenged to fulfill all of our staffing positions related to our base program throughout the year. That's about a 4.5 or 5% underspend in all base program staffing. And as I mentioned, that results in a contribution from underspending of about $620,000 of the $1.1 million surplus. The other line item that was a good surprise for us is also in the revenue section, where we budgeted for structural compliance revenue in 2020 at $49,140. Our understanding, of course, originally was that program was to end. So we had a good surprise, if you will, $148,000 of additional revenue within the structural compliance envelope that was unplanned. So between those two items, salaries, benefits, and structural compliance, were about $770,000 of the $1.1 million surplus. The remaining surpluses come from in the nursing department, underspending in our nurse practitioner program of $42,000, additional nursing recoveries of $72,000, within food services, equipment replacements under by $14,500, replacements for dishes and cutlery underspending by almost $5,000. Housekeeping supplies in that department down by $5,000. In the laundry department, equipment operation and maintenance, $8,300 under budget. Laundry replacements, linens, if you will, $3,500 under budget. In the maintenance department, furniture replacements under budgets, $36,000. Repairs and maintenance to the building and grounds, savings of $14,000. Natural gas, $11,000, and computer operations and maintenance costs of $2,900. In the admin department, the major contributors were recoveries in excess of budget by $67,000. Staff training underspent by $23,000. Computer and internet related costs of $11,000 under budget. Legal and labor contracting costs under by $7,000, and a number of smaller items. So in total, Mr. Chair, that list that I provided to you represents $1.103 million of savings against the 1104 on the financial statements. Perhaps, Mr. Chair, I should stop there just before I move on to Miramichi Lodge, in case there are some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Foss. Very comprehensive. I must say, there's a lot of numbers in a very condensed time frame there. I am glad that I can restream this again and perhaps follow along a little more slowly. I wonder, committee, any questions or comments on the financial report with respect to Bonnechere Manor? I see Warden Robinson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm not going to try to grab a hold of any of those numbers. Just a comment, though. I heard Mr. Foss say that we're under budget because we have nurse practitioner 49,000. Are we having difficulty, Ms. Sheedy, to fill that position?
Ms. Sheedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the warden. Our nurse practitioner was on mat leave last year, and we did try to recruit. Very difficult to recruit somebody into a temporary position, particularly during a pandemic. We went without a nurse practitioner.
So if I may, has she returned now? Do we have a full-time NP there?
We do. She returned in February.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions with respect to Bonnechere Manor? I see none. Mr. Foss, please carry on to Miramichi Lodge.
Thank you, Chair. And I would direct committee's attention within the report to page 45. Again, jumping right to the summary of the financial surplus for Miramichi Lodge. You will note that there is on page 45 a surplus of $300,771 against a total revenue of $16.7 million. Similar to my discussion with you for Bonnechere Manor, at the very end of the revenue section, we have a number of brand new revenue accounts. Similar to Bonnechere Manor, there is an IPAC revenue stream of $92,164. Within Miramichi Lodge, they use this IPAC funding to support the purchase of 3 special tubs at $20,606, as well as a building automation and control system of $49,959. So, sorry, there were 3 tubs. It's $20,606 each, plus the building automation and control system. A couple of numbers higher, you'll see we have, similar to Bonnechere Manor, COVID support of $1,178,000 at Miramichi Lodge. Their additional payroll costs, so that's salaries and benefits, amounted to $284,106. Similar to Bonnechere Manor, there was a special pandemic pay at $4 per hour for all frontline staff in long-term care homes, as well as a supplementary for our PSWs, $3 per hour for the period October 1st to December the 31st. In total, pandemic payroll was $666,158. Expenses, again, the special account that we set up to track all expenses in all departments for Miramichi Lodge was $227,774. In total, total COVID-19 related expenditures for Miramichi Lodge, $1,178,000. And so we had special COVID provincial subsidy support that equaled that same amount of $1,178,000. From a determination of the surplus perspective of $300,000, we had, if we looked at total salaries and benefits for Miramichi Lodge, they represented $12,387,000 for the year against a budget of $11,386,000. That's for all departments' salaries and benefits. That's $1,452,000 over budget. And of that $1 million, $950,000 is directly related to those special payments for COVID-19, whether it's pandemic pay or additional incremental staffing. So that leaves us with about $53,000 over budget in all departments for Miramichi Lodge, which is about 0.4 of 1%. So almost exactly on budget at Miramichi Lodge for our base programs. In addition to the salary position, similarly to Bonnechere Manor, we had $42,000 in underspend on the nurse practitioner program. The RAI program was about $24,000 under budget, and the nursing department had $28,000 of additional recoveries that were not budgeted for. Housekeeping supplies were $14,000 under budget. In the maintenance department, repairs and maintenance to the buildings and grounds were $27,000 under budget. Furniture replacements, $34,000 under budget, and equipment replacements, $23,000 under budget. Within the administration department, other recoveries, $37,550 in over budget. Staff training costs were $9,700 under budget, as were telephone expenses at $8,500 under budget. We do have a couple of other items at the Senior Housing's Strategy Report, which was presented to this committee not that long ago. The payments made to that organization to December the 31st were $23,827 under budget, and preferred accommodation revenue was $31,000 in excess of our budget. So in total, those variances were $306,000 in surplus, representing almost the entirety of the $300,771 as identified in your financial statements. And likewise, Mr. Chair, perhaps I just stop there and ask for any questions.
Thank you once again, Mr. Foss. Committee, any questions with respect to the unaudited financial report for Miramichi Lodge? I just had one question, Mr. Foss. With respect, this is on page 44 of the report, the non-subsidizable expense and the debenture payment interest only, and it shows a variance of $32,668, ultimately in the favor of the County of Renfrew, there's no question. But is the interest not a fixed cost that is known at the start of the year?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I believe our budget, when we developed our budget in 2020, simply carried over the principal and interest components from the 2019 budget period. And although the total expenditures are roughly the same on an annual basis, there's a crossover between those two. So I'd have to look into that a little further, but I believe the budget just was maintained at the 2019 level.
All right, thank you. And that's a blended payment. I'm sure everyone that's here has had a mortgage, so that's understandable. One other question with respect to both of these reports, and we will have the same thing with vis-a-vis the emergency services, the paramedic services. On the COVID-related costs, are these funded through dedicated funds, or are some of these going to be allocated from the Safe Restart funding?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. So for Bonnechere Manor, all of the COVID-related expenditures, which would be payroll costs, incremental staffing costs, the pandemic pay, any expenditures, as well as the IPAC funding, are all dedicated revenue streams that are coming to us from the Ministry of Health. Likewise, in Miramichi Lodge, all of those expenditures are dedicated expenditure streams coming from the Ministry of Health. And for paramedic services, exactly the same case. All of those funds are coming as dedicated COVID support payments from the Ministry of Health. The surprise to us was paramedic services. We did not receive notification that any money was available until January the 19th, but we did utilize fully 100% of the grant that was provided to us by the Ministry of Health for COVID costs in paramedic services. So for the purposes of this committee, none of the expenditures related to COVID were supported through the federal Safe Start initiative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foss. And I have to express, I have some anxiety if we've had pleasant surprise with respect to funding from the province. I think, in fact, that is one of the signs to watch for of the end of the world. Committee, any further comments or questions on the unaudited financial reports? Thank you. With that, then, thank you once again, Mr. Foss, and I will return the floor, Ms. Sheedy, to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're on item number 10, which is on the top of page 12. The seniors housing strategy. Mr. Morrow was contacted from Advantage Ontario and asked if the County of Renfrew would like to make a presentation at the upcoming Advantage Ontario annual convention. And so Chair Donahue, Mr. Folds from REFAC Consulting, Mr. Kelly, of course, our Director of Development and Property, and myself will be actually taping this presentation at 1 p.m. sharp this afternoon. And that brings us to item number 11, which is the AGM and convention for Advantage Ontario, which is going to take place, of course, virtually May 5th to 6th this year. If any county councillors are interested in attending, please contact Diane, and her contact information is there, and she can get you registered. The good news is that if you're not available on those dates, but interested, you can still register, and then you have access to all of the speakers and presentations for the following month. Item number 12 is fundraising. The butterfly bulletins are attached for each of the homes, and the link there for the manor and the lodge. And it is with regret that I advise you that Lainey, formerly Bolt Johnson, now McIntyre, is leaving us as of Thursday. She's accepted a position in the wedding planning business. And so we're very sorry to see her go. She was a wealth of creativity, particularly during these very challenging times to raise any funds. Item number 13 is our expressions of gratitude. The first one is from a family member related to the manor, and the second one is from a family member related to the lodge. Item number 14 is a resolution. So it's the Bonisher Manor Senior Adult Day Program, MSAW Schedule G Declaration of Compliance. So the recommendation is that the Health Committee recommend that County Council authorize the Warden and Chief Administrative Officer / Clerk to sign the annual Schedule G, which is found on page 47 of your package, form of compliance declaration for the period of April 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021, as part of the MSAW agreement between the Champlain Lynn and Bonisher Manor for continuation of 100% provincial funding. You may ask, you just brought us a whole bunch of documents to approve to sign last month. Funny enough, those documents are required to be signed and submitted before March 31st. This particular document cannot be submitted until after April 1st. 1 year we tried to be super efficient and get them all signed at the same time, and they wouldn't accept it. So the background information is there. As you well know, we do operate the Adult Day Program on site at Bonisher Manor and in Cobden, and it is 100% funded by the province. And so I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, if you would like to see if you could have a mover.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sheedy. Can I have a mover for this recommendation, please? Councillor Doncaster, seconded by Councillor Emo. Any question, comment, discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. With that, then, Ms. Sheedy, does that conclude your report? Oh, no, we have the addendum. Sorry.
Exactly. And so, Mr. Chair, since it is a resolution, I'm going to suggest that I review it now. And then if you want to go back through the report, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, I think that's what we will do. Yeah, we'll read the recommendation. Unlike the last one, I don't think I'm trying to arrive at. This was a lengthy and involved report that I'm assuming there's going to be considerable questions on this. This is a pretty key concept moving forward, the Ontario health teams. Anyway, let's read the recommendation. We'll get it onto the floor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, well, sorry, I'll read the recommendation. So Diane emailed everybody this information yesterday, this addendum, and it is as a result of a meeting that just happened on Monday evening. So the recommendation is that the Health Committee recommend that County Council authorize the warden to sign the finalized application from Network 24 Ontario Health Team as one of the participating partners to be submitted to the Ministry of Health by the deadline of April 30th.
Thank you, Ms. Sheedy. Can I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. Discussion.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, I could give just a bit of background.
Please, yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. We'll start there.
So you have the information that it is in item number 6 in the report. And then, as I said, this meeting was called on Monday evening, and Chief Nolan and myself are on the collaboration table, and we will continue to be on the collaboration table. So it basically, there's a representative for anybody that would be considered a partner in the healthcare world within Network 24. And a little aside, there is plan to change the name at some point, but the priority is to get the application in first. And so there is the slide deck that was included with the addendum. So I would just draw your attention first to slide number 19, which speaks to the confirmation of the year 1 population. So, sorry, perhaps, Mr. Chair, what I should have prefaced everything with is that this is a little bit of an unusual situation because there is the timeline of March 30th, which the government's already extended. It was supposed to be March 31st. So it is a very, definite timeline. The proposal is not complete yet, but this is what we do know. And I think everything that we do know at this time, we can endorse, and certainly that would be the staff recommendation. So first of all is the population for year 1. And so it's seniors with health needs who require care and community supports to be able to stay at home. I think that's, very consistent with all of our strategic planning and many, many initiatives. And then, of course, mental health and substance abuse. And then I would draw your attention, I know it's out of order, but it's the way the slides are done. Slide number 15, and all those slides up into slide 15 are meant to really overview what the purpose of an Ontario Health Team is. And I know this committee is well versed in that. But what is important to notice in slide number 15 is those green bubbles are meant to illustrate not an inclusive set of initiatives, but some that are already in place or, lots of work happening in terms of filling the gaps to the challenges in our local healthcare system. And what I think is particularly noteworthy is certainly 3 of them, but I think even the third one, mental health collaboration and others. So paramedic assisted living, VTAC, mental health collaboration, and virtual visits and monitoring. Those all are aligned with our community paramedicine program. Sorry, I'm just laughing at Councillor Emel's remark. So I think, that again, that's well in line with the County of Renfrew strategic planning and initiatives. Slide number 20 speaks to, the nuts and bolts which have not been completed yet and what they've asked each partner to do. So long-term care is a partner. I'm the representative for that. So I've gone back to my colleagues in Renfrew County, all but the Grove and our Prior, which of course is a different health team. And we're working right now by this Friday submission to Network 24 to fill in the details in slide number 20. So it is basically what we think the Ontario Health Team should focus on in year 1. And what was really emphasized at our meeting on Monday evening by the consultant is that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. this is only year one, and they really want to emphasize what is already up and running and where we're already collaborating and what is working well. Not to say that there can't be any new initiatives proposed, but again, this is year one and we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so they're really looking for what is working well from a collaboration perspective from each of the partners. So long-term care would be one, emergency services would be another. And then what sort of metrics and measures would we recommend? So that work is happening right now as we speak. And again, I'll be submitting that to the Network 24 on Friday. And then slide number 29 speaks to those deadlines and the fact that it is due to the province by the end of this month. But they don't anticipate having it finalized until the week of April 26th. And so staff are recommending for all of those reasons that, you know, everything that I've just reviewed is well aligned with our philosophies. And I did miss a major portion, which is in the addendum. And that is the fact that it's also well aligned with what the Eastern Ontario Caucus has identified as priorities with respect to Ontario health teams. And that is that virtual care is recognized, and we've already touched on that. And the second part of it is that we need municipal representation from a governance perspective. And so what his staff is recommending at this point in time is none of the Ontario health teams, including those that have been up and running long before us, like for the last year, have touched on governance yet. So it would be premature to, you know, have that discussion at this point for the Network 24 application. But what staff are recommending is that there is all the good work that's happening through our warden and the chair of the Eastern Ontario Warden Caucus, as well as Councillor Emo and Amo, to advocate that there has to be municipal representation from a governance perspective on these OHTs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sheedy. Very comprehensive report. And I certainly will acknowledge to committee, this is something that that is the Ontario health teams. The modernization of health generally in Ontario was something that was taken up through the formation of the Health and Social Services Modernization Ad Hoc Committee back in early 2019. That unfortunately has like so many other things, become a victim to COVID at the bandwidth that's available to various staff to pursue this. So it had been somewhat in the doldrums. Typically, this report would have been coming through that committee to Health Committee. But I do know that there's a very keen interest. That interest is what led to the formation of the Ad Hoc Committee in 2019. And I know that there is keen interest in the development of the Ontario Health Team. So I think it's perhaps appropriate to engage with the addendum item number 15 prior to going back to the start of the health report, the long-term care report. So I know Warden Robinson, you had your hand up. We will begin with you, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And there's a lot running through my head right now as I go through this. So hopefully I can choose carefully what I know that I realize that governance is something that the group may not be prepared to discuss at this point, but I think that it is essential that we make it clear that if the committees chooses to endorse this recommendation and go to county council and county council endorses it, that I should sign on as supporting it. I think that it has to be very clear that governance is still a major issue and that we're not signing off and walking away from this. I don't personally, I think governance should be included right at the beginning of the creation of this as opposed to an afterthought. So that does concern me. I certainly don't want the Ministry of Health to think that the County of Renfrew is signing off on this and going on to something else. And just another comment, I would hope that they clean the slides up a bit, unless somehow they're not being, what I'm seeing is looks like there's things laid on top of each other. I can't read the writing. I'm really not sure what people-centered home health means, or healthy at home, people-centered. Anyway, I just hope that it's going to be cleaned up. I do have personally, I have some reservations signing off on this at this point, but certainly I will do what committee and council direct me to do.
Thank you very much, Warden Robinson. With respect to the infographics, I struggled a little bit at the outset on the first run, but then it did click, and I mean no disrespect here, but it almost seemed like it was like the edges of the comic books that you one time had. If you flipped them fast, it was like an animation, that it was working from the center out to the edges, because I did have difficulty, but it did make eminent sense on the follow-up. Like you, governance is certainly going to be critical to this. This is the Ontario Health Teams are the agencies through which funding will be dispersed as well. So that is a critical element. But at this time, I am certainly prepared to move forward. With that, Councillor Emo, I believe you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this, Shelley. This is a very informative primer. And like the warden, I think any endorsement, we should maybe even title it a qualified endorsement with the and the 2 points that are concerning for me. And I recognize COVID and trying to, and certainly appreciate the fact that this group has come together from a very fractured start some 14 or 18 months ago. So I think, if we can offer that, we're endorsing their progress to date, and our support is qualified, but governance is an important issue. And I think we need a timeline on gap analysis. What services aren't existing, what mandates can be shifted with the existing partnerships. I've always maintained, I think there's enough capacity within the overall system across the county to meet most of the needs of our community, but some of the partners have to shift their mandate 3 degrees to the left and the other one's 3 degrees to the right. And so I think we need a map forward on how they're going to identify the gaps, a timeline, and how they expect to fill them. And I think we owe it to our community and to these folks to say, look, you've done a good job to this point, thank you, but it's not over, and here's where we see the weaknesses in what you're proposing. Not the weaknesses, but the areas you need to concentrate on soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Emo. Councillor Doncaster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, similarly to Councillor Emo's points, it's interesting to read through, and I think we all get an understanding on, how many services and organizations are there, but the coordination of that is, the coordination and the collaboration of that is just a monumental task. Looking at that, and yeah, seeing it all in one place, identifying those gaps, I think would be a really important, or identifying capacity within the systems, or within the organization, the partners, the collaboration together will be really important. And I think that the governance is going to be a bit of a challenge for sure. When you look at, all of the partners that are involved in this, and, how that governance will be coordinated, I think is important moving forward. But, great initiative to see all of this coming together in one place. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think there will ever be an end of the day, but, I think we're going to have I think we will have better services for the residents of the entire area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Doncaster. Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am going to be very careful in how I word this. The governance issue is and has been a challenge ever since we met at Bonmachir Manor years ago, when we had all the players at the table. And I think that I completely agree with my colleagues, especially Warden Robinson, in saying, like, where is the County of Renfrew's role in this? Because we did sort of hear, back in 2018 or 2019, when all of this came about, that, why was the County of Renfrew basically meddling? And so I think that we definitely need the government to know the County of Renfrew is not saying, great job, well done, and we're walking away. Just, just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. Warden Robinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to make sure that it's clear here that I have the utmost confidence in both Ms. Sheedy and Chief Nolan to, represent the County of Renfrew at these discussions and negotiations and at the table. My hesitation is not on the recommendation itself so much as what my signature may be interpreted as. So as long as it's very clear that we're supporting the proposal at this point, but that we expect the County of Renfrew and which really equates to me, the voices of the residents of the County of Renfrew should be heard at the table in a governance position. So I just want to make sure that that is understood. The other question I have would be to Shelley, if I may. Upon your retirement, do we lose your voice at this table?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the warden. It is my intent to recommend to my colleague group of long-term care providers that considering you operate the two largest homes in Renfrew County, that there can continue to be a representative there from the county, from the long-term care homes, County Renfrew. So in other words, my replacement would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Ms. Sheedy. Councillor Lafreniere.
Thank you. So we all know that we have a homelessness problem that is going to be increasing now with real estate skyrocketing. A lot of the people that are at risk of homelessness are being asked to leave their residence now because it's either been sold, et cetera, et cetera. I guess as it relates to what we're looking at today, I'm wondering if we have representation from a group that provides services to people that are homeless. I guess something like The Grind. I recently was at their new facility and they had been talking about clients that come in that are ill, that need to see a physician that don't have one. They were, talking about the future looked like possibly having a virtual room where these people could contact physicians, because they don't have the ways or means to go to a care provider. I don't see that component of society in this group of partner groups. I see mental health and addictions, but some of these people haven't even connected with those groups. So I'm wondering how we could incorporate that here, because that's going to be growing at a terrible rate. I know it's been expressed at different committees, but I'm wondering how can we implement that into here? Because I think that's a whole part of our population that's going to be left out.
Mr. Morrow, I saw your hand first, and then I will ask Ms. Sheedy to speak to this as well.
Thank you. If it's okay, Chair, I just want to speak to the governance issue and some of the comments that were made. I just want to go back to where Councillor Murphy was talking about back in, I believe it was August of 2018, when we had our first session with all the folks around the table. If committee recalls, we have come a long way, because at that first session, what we had seen was 3 separate applications. And it was actually the goal and the primary focus of the ad hoc committee was to steer this group for, yes, thank you, 4 separate applications. And it was the goal of the ad hoc committee to steer this group and get them into one application. Now, do we have Iron Prior on board? No, we don't, but we really didn't anticipate that. But what we do have is a group, for the most part, a collaboration with one single application. Is the governance issue resolved? No, it's not. But again, I did want to acknowledge that we've had great success with council's influence, making sure that we have a single application for the ratepayers of the County of Renfrew. So for the most part, we have been successful in achieving that. And I did want to acknowledge that important milestone, based on County of Renfrew's influence in our process. We've got there on that piece. And I think that's significant to acknowledge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow. Ms. Sheedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Fernier's point, and I think it was a very astute point. So what I would say is that the list of collaborations was a snapshot in time, and the intent is that it should, at every meeting we have, it's who's not on the list, who should be on the list. So I will definitely take that back to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sheedy. I also want to know, and I think it is certainly recognized all through. Both Councillor Lafreniere and Mayor Lemay are here, of course, representative of the City of Pembroke, and Mayor Lemay has been an integral component of the ad hoc, the health and social services, et cetera, and very much appreciative of that. So certainly want to acknowledge that this is both a county and city endeavor. And Mr. Morrow, just picking up on Mr. Morrow's comments, taking us back to, I thought perhaps it was precisely 2 years ago. I think, Mr. Morrow, you had suggested February of 2019, when all of the parties were sitting in the same room, perhaps circling warily at the outset, but nonetheless in the same room. And I would suggest that there has been great movement forward. The county position has been clear that we're not in a leadership role per se in the health field, the health sector, but between the two long-term care homes, combined 346 beds, by the way, the single largest in the county of Renfrew, with the budget between the two long-term care homes and the paramedic services, we are responsible for $50 million of healthcare funding, and certainly acknowledging, as Ms. Sheedy has done, it's about time that long-term care is recognized as a health sector and not a housing sector. But that certainly there is a role there at the table. But things have moved a long ways. The field has shifted considerably in the direction that we wanted to make sure that it shifted in. I think that the county and city are uniquely placed to be representative of the community. Perhaps also patient groups, patient representatives can do the same thing, but perhaps in picking up on Councillor Lafreniere's point as well, it is a unique position that we are in, speaking as one through the warden of the County of Renfrew, to represent the broader population here. There's no question that governance is going to be a thorny issue, and we do need to recognize that and work diligently and in good faith towards coming up with an appropriate governance model for this, recognizing that I guess this is the third, perhaps, different structure of health, probably of this millennium, beginning with the district health councils and onto the LHINs and now onto Ontario health teams. And hopefully we can gain some traction and not be doing this again in the next 15 years. But I think that is a thorny enough issue that we need to embrace, that we are moving forward here. What I will say specific to this one, I'm very pleased at the priority population that has been identified. Certainly through individualized efforts, much of the effort certainly that's been exercised by the County of Renfrew and City of Pembroke in the fields of long-term care and the paramedic service are in alignment individually with the collective of this group, that is to make health more accessible to them, to be patient-centered. To increase the access through virtual, to recognize the challenge, not just here, certainly in rural everywhere, of access to the healthcare system. I think that this has moved a long way. The needle has really moved here, and yet the elbows are going to be up on the governance issue, and it's imperative that the people of the County of Renfrew and the City of Pembroke, through this agency, make sure that there is appropriate governance to serve the residents of the City of Pembroke and the County of Renfrew. I wonder, Mayor Lemay, did you wish to add anything as well to this? I know this has been very close to your heart, having served on the initial LHIN board.
No, I'm really pleased to see it move forward, and I understand the governance issue. but finally there's something on the table, and I'm really pleased to see this. Excuse me, because I'm a firm believer in the social determinants of health. You know, it's got to work that way. And this particular collaboration table, the material that we have here indicates that. So I'm very pleased and very supportive moving forward. Just happy to see it move, and let's get on with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Perhaps on a lighter note, I would suggest, much like my approach to my post-secondary, I always worked better under pressure. When the deadlines loomed, it did instill a great deal more focus than when the timeline was perhaps farther off on the horizon. And the final thing is, I'm very pleased, hopefully sooner rather than later, the name has changed. I think Network 24 is to take over as Spectre, as the next great arch villain to James Bond, if I'm not mistaken. If there is nothing further on this, then I will call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. With that, we are now 70 minutes into our meeting. Does anyone, before we begin to review the report as a whole, is everyone prepared for a 10-minute break? All right, then let us have a 10-minute break. Mr. Benke, if you could apprise when you have set up the screen. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you made the most use of the time. With that, then, we are going to return to the item number 1 on the report for review. Any questions or comments with respect to item number 1, the Bonnechere Manor resident statistics? Item number 2, Miramichi Lodge resident statistics. Oh, I got thrown. I was looking for the wait list. I forgot that that was going to be a quarterly report. Don't rely on the old memory. Item number 3, the COVID-19 pandemic update. We'll go through this a single bullet at each time. The Miramichi Lodge outbreak. Certainly, hopefully, this is the last reference that we will have to that. So I'm going to take the opportunity to once again commend staff for the outstanding effort that was stood up. 38 days, I believe, was the duration of the outbreak, but I'm sure it probably seemed like a year, an odyssey at the very least. So thank you to everyone, and I'm sure it wasn't all hands on deck standing up. Very pleased at that. Thank you, Ms. Sheedy. The second bullet point, surveillance and symptomatic testing. The Ministry of Long-Term Care path to recovery. The continued suspension of the occupancy targets, prevention and containment funding, I am pleased also, thank you, Ms. Sheedy, so that it is anticipated that the large part of the unspent funds for the provincial fiscal year will be allocated prior to, or have, I guess, by now, prior to the end of March. Item number 4, the National Long-Term Care Standards. I'm going to pick up once again on Ms. Sheedy's comments, both at this point in her report and also with respect, I think, to the addendum, that it is long overdue. Perhaps committee council may actually be weary of me saying that, but even from the long-term care within the municipal sector, I have even questioned when we receive our audited financial report that we are obligated to report our long-term care under social services or community services in our particular case, as opposed to health. And I think it is long past due that long-term care be recognized as part of the health care continuum. And I think that that's fundamental to having the conversations that we need to have, is to recognizing the very nature of long-term care. Item 5, the transfer order notices. Item 6, the Ontario Health Team. I think we've probably had a good go at this one. Item 7, the provincial budget with respect to long-term care. I must comment on this. I noticed, and I'm appreciative actually, as June nears, which has a particular significance for Ms. Sheedy, I much appreciate the candor with respect to the CMI. It was one time referred to as problematic, and now it is referred to as farcical. I am much appreciative of the increasing candor, Ms. Sheedy, that you are bringing to these meetings. And I am in full agreement with you, by the way. Stabilization funding. Personal support worker training and wages. Going to commend once more where appropriate the provincial government of finally recognizing and moving towards the holy grail that we've been seeking for some time of the 4 hours of care. That cannot happen without the staffing to support that. Very pleased at the recognition that has been long extant in long-term care in particular, but as we move forward towards increasing the level of service and level of care, very appreciative of these initiatives. The infection prevention and control, minor capital, long-term care, minor capital funding. Infection prevention and control, staffing and training. Rapid testing. Third-party surveillance. And finally, the capital redevelopment / new long-term care beds. I think it does behoove me to congratulate Four Seasons. This is an incredible, dramatic increase, 900% almost increase to the long-term care beds being offered in Deep River, whether they are in Deep River, whether they are in Barry's Bay, whether they are in Arn Prior, they are serving our community. So very pleased to see that some of the expansion of the bricks and mortar in long-term care is being visited upon us here in Renfrew County and made available to our residents. And certainly note also the last sentence with respect to almost 2/3 of the new or redeveloped beds is oriented towards the nonprofit and municipal sector. Very pleased at that. Item 8, medication safety technology. Item 9, the unaudited financial statements. Item 10, the seniors housing strategy. I will also respond to Councillor Murphy's suggestion. Certainly it is very low maintenance when it ceases growing. It doesn't take me any time at all in the morning. I comb my hair now with a towel. Item 11, Advantage Ontario AGM. Item 12, fundraising. Sorry, Councillor Emo.
My apologies, I was busy flipping up my screen. Congratulations on number 11. This has been something I think all of us in these chambers and I'm sure our friends at the city have wanted, that our expertise in delivering rural health and rural services gets recognized, and increasingly the county and the city are doing that by making presentations like this. So congratulations. I know it'll go well, and I'm sure you'll be bombarded with people looking for more information after you've made your presentation. So congratulations and thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Councillor Email, and thank you on behalf of all of the parties. Like you have said, I am inordinately pleased every time that we here in rural Ontario are making our voices be heard, and that best practices do not have to come simply from University Avenue. They can be developed across the spectrum in the province of Ontario. Item number 12. Through you, Ms. Sheedy, I want to extend congratulations first to Lainey McIntyre on her new role, the new role that she's taking on. As I have said repeatedly, unfortunately, fundraising has come to be such an integral component to healthcare, all sectors of healthcare. And I know that and note that Ms. McIntyre has made enormous efforts, particularly in the COVID challenge, of continuing the vital fundraising initiatives that were started, and in particular for us with respect to Miramichi and Bonachère is the butterfly model in particular. So through you, thank you to Ms. McIntyre for all of her efforts, and congratulations and good fortune. Item 13, the expressions of gratitude. Again, it is unsurprising each time that we receive the expressions of gratitude. The level of care and the personal connection at both Miramichi Lodge and Bonachère Manor certainly is emblematic of this being the home for the residents and not an institution. With that, then we have addressed the resolution number 14. We have also addressed through the addendum resolution 15. Are there any more questions or comments on any of the long-term care report? Warden Robinson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm wondering if you would entertain a motion to reconsider for item number 15, the resolution regarding the signing the application for Network 24. My reasoning to do that is I would like to add an addendum to that recommendation that would direct the warden to write a letter to Network 24 indicating the County of Renfrew's concern around the governance model for the OHT.
I am more than happy to receive a motion to reconsider. It will need a seconder, of course. Seconded by Councillor Love. Mr. Morrow, on a motion to reconsider, does it require a supermajority or a simple majority?
Thank you, Chair, through you to committee. Such a motion must be supported by a 2/3 majority vote of the members present before the matter to be reconsidered can be debated.
All right, thank you. So Mr. Morrow, what's the quick math on the numbers present? 11, I think I'm seeing.
Yes,
So-
sir. So
So it
2/3.
still will take, I believe, 8. I believe 7 would not pass. I just wanted to establish the parameters before calling the vote. Is this debatable, Mr. Morrow?
Yeah. I do not believe it is debatable, sir.
I think there are only 10 of us.
Yeah, I think there is 10.
10? Okay, thank you. So it will take 7 votes in support. It is not debatable. So with that in mind, then I will not seek any question, comment, discussion. I will, sorry, Mr. Morrow.
Chair, for clarification, debate on the question must be confined to reasons for or against. Very limited debate. Why you would be for or against the motion to reconsider.
Okay, thank you. But it is eligible then for comment with that narrow focus.
Correct, sir.
Okay, thank you. With that, then, it has been duly moved and seconded to committee. Are there any comments specifically on the intent to reconsider? Okay, with that, then, all in favor, and please hold your hands up. I don't think this is a recorded vote, but I will need to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, I don't. 10. It is passed. So now, because the motion was simply to reconsider, now, Warden Robinson, I would presume that a follow-up motion would need to be introduced on how you would wish to amend the recommendation. Warden
All right,
Robinson.
so I would move that the recommendation, that we add to the recommendation the words, and that the warden send a letter to Network 24 indicating the County of Renfrew's position on the governance model for the OHT.
I'm certainly open to that, but have we established a position on the governance model per se right now, Mr. Morrow?
Chair, if with your indulgence, I'll share my screen and put up some proposed wording on the screen, and we could work with that if that works for the warden and yourself, Chair.
That's fine, Mr. Morrow. I just wish to perhaps elaborate a little bit. I'm not sure that County Council has adopted a position with respect to governance of Ontario health teams. Now, I'm certainly open towards the correspondence being submitted to the table, the organizing table. We would just have to be careful on the wording because it could not suggest that the county has a position so much as it would be expressing our desire for there to be position for elected. Warden Robinson.
I absolutely agree. I didn't have time to start going through, but I do believe that the AOWC has a motion. We could use that wording. I just wanted us to consider it to add to this. So I'm not married to position, concern, comment, whatever. I just want to send a letter.
No, absolutely, and it's appropriate to certainly have it rock solid within the public record of today's meeting. So, Mr. Morrow, if you wish to share your screen, then please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm hopeful that what I've shared captures not a position, but an expression as you had indicated.
Sure seems to have hit the nail on the head in my estimation, Mr. Morrow. Warden Robinson, is it you have your hand up?
That's fine. Much nicer than my right to the point kind of motion, but this is lovely.
I just would love to know what you're thinking right now, Warden.
I don't think you would, actually, Mr. Morrow. With that, then, Warden Robinson, are you moving then that the recommendation be amended to include that language?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Morrow, could you return the screen? I'm only seeing a limited number of people on the
That's
right-hand side. Can I have a, oh, sorry. I might as well go to a seconder first, and then I will come back to you, Ms. Sheedy. Seconded by Councillor Love. Ms. Sheedy, you wish to speak to this?
Sorry, Paul, could you put that up again? It just said municipal representation. You could just put it up one more time. I think it's missing the word governance, because otherwise, Mike and I are already there as staff.
You are muted, Mr. Morrow.
The need for governance. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it
Thank
does
you.
include
I
that.
apologize. Yeah.
Not at all. It is important to get this correct, not to get it fast. Thank you, Ms. Sheedy. With that, then the concern that you had expressed does seem to have been satisfied. It has been moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Love. Any further question, comment on the amendment? Councillor Lafreniere.
I'm only questioning the word need. So in that caption you just showed us, the need for, should we not use a word that means if you want us to support it, it will have da 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 da? Because that's just sort of an inference saying this would be nice. So I don't think we want to give them the choice, right? Like, I don't know. I'm just questioning the word need. In other words, it needs this, but we're not really wanting to say that. We're wanting to say it must include this.
One of the things that I think I received as an inference from our discussion is that we separate the two components, that one is not contingent upon the other right now, that in fact we are supportive of the application moving forward with the priority population, et cetera, but that we are recognizing that the involved, perhaps thorny issue with respect to governance, it is our position that there needs to be a municipal representation on the governance. Certainly, I'll open it to committee on whether you share the concerns of Councillor Lafreniere.
Well, I would just simply say that it must include municipal representation as part of the governance. So anyway, it's not a biggie.
Thank you. Warden Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just through you to Mr. Morrow. I just want to make sure this motion is consistent with what we've supported at the EOWC as well. Are you able to find that motion?
I will have to dig that up, Chair. I can do that. Off the top of my head, I believe when I go back to the motion that was passed, though, from my past memory and the letter that was raised by Warden Breezy, it would be consistent. Yes, that is what he is asking for.
Okay.
What I would suggest, if you wish to verify that, Mr. Morrow, because this particular motion, this particular initiative is certainly one of significant substance. It has been 2 years now in the making of getting us to this point. That if there is any doubt at all, I'm certainly prepared to put a pause on our meeting right now for you to verify Warden Robinson's concerns, that we are consistent with the messaging that is going forward through some of the associations and other entities. I will certainly leave that at your discretion, Mr. Morrow, but I do not want the clock to dictate the proper wording.
Thank you, Chair. It will take me a few minutes to find the EOWC wording.
I think that it would be appropriate to do that. One of the things, just before you do that, I just do wonder, perhaps semantic at this point, but given that we had approved the resolution, did we need to sever this from the report prior to the motion to reconsider? I hadn't even considered that.
I hadn't considered that either. It was the one item that we had done.
The report hasn't been approved yet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. With that, then I will not bother you anymore. I think this is perhaps just the warden constantly testing my knowledge of the procedural bylaw. Good on you. With that, then perhaps Mr. Benke, so as to not be projecting our anxious. Thank you for your patience, everyone, committee, staff, and those who are perhaps streaming live this morning. We have determined that the language is consistent with the position of the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. So with that, any further comment or discussion on the proposed language to amend the recommendation? All in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Once more, I will defer to you, Mr. Morrow. Do we now need to once again approve that resolution as amended?
Yes, we do, sir.
All right, thank you. With that then, can I thank you, Warden Robinson?
I apologize, I'm wrong. We did a motion to reconsider, so the old resolution was taken off the floor. That was a new resolution, so you've approved the new resolution. My apologies.
But I believe we also just adopted a resolution to amend the recommendation.
Yes, okay, sure. Okay, thank you, thank you. Yeah.
With that then, Warden Robinson, I believe you were prepared to move that the recommendation be approved as amended.
That's correct.
Seconder, please, Councillor Murphy. Any further question, comment upon pain of death? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept the long-term care report then, please? Councillor Doncaster, seconded by Councillor Love. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience this morning. With that then, Deputy Chief Leahy, could you please take us through the Emergency Services report, please?
Thank you and good morning. Through you, Chair to Committee. Firstly, Chief Nolan sends his regrets. Overlapping commitments this morning has me before you. However, he may have an opportunity to join us later in the report. Item number 1, Commander Amber Holtink and Advanced Care Paramedic Chelsea Lanos have been invited to present Community Palliative Care Program to Hospice Palliative Care Ontario. This, as you can imagine, is a virtual conference, given what's before us. The theme is the new normal of hospice palliative care in a pandemic world, and I imagine in a post-pandemic world as well, when this is behind us. We're confident that Amber and Chelsea will represent the service and the corporation well. Acting Commander Blackwell continues to manage our public access DFib program and has applied for several grants. These are the major grants that we tend to look for annually. There's some ancillary grants as well that branch off of these. However, Rob does a great job in accessing those resources. We currently have, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this, we currently have 368 active and registered public access defibrillators throughout the county of Renfrew. The registered piece is big because there are some philanthropists out there who have kindly thrown defibrillators our way previously or thrown them into the community resource. However, without a program to maintain them and understand where they are and how they can be accessed, they tend to fall short. So even those who come forward with donations that continue to happen, we make sure that they're registered with the Central Avenues Communication Center in Renfrew and with our program so that we can access them by all means at all times. Item number 3, it appears that the flood concerns are behind us for the year. Conversely, it appears that there's a bit of a shortage of water as identified in the report. Some of the basins are below limits or at summer levels. However, it's the powers that be are confident that with the dams now holding back water, that the basin levels will be reached appropriately. Bullet point number 2 of item 3, we've had 11 calls requiring CRA team assistance this year since the beginning of 2021. So far, March tends to be a busy month with the weather getting nicer and people getting out on the trails more so. And as you can see, they're related to snowmobile and ATV calls primarily. We had a spring refresher, if you will, in terms of bullet point number 3 of item 3. We had a CR team training session. It's basically, to use an aviation parlance, it's a rust remover. We go back through our equipment, testing, training protocols, winching, trailering, so forth. And hypothermia. Now, some of you may have seen that it's odd that we're dealing with hypothermia in the spring of the year, given the cold weather is primarily behind us. However, most of our hypothermic calls do appear in the spring because the ice is off. People are on and sometimes unintentionally in the water, as well as out on trails. We still have nice days and cool nights. So hypothermia continues to be a major risk during the spring of the year. Item number 4, there continues to be a very high demand for swabbing for COVID tests, given all of the reasons listed in the report. For primary ones, the public health direction for school-aged children, increased case counts, increased rates of transmission, and the variant of concern, of course, as we're all hearing in the media on a daily basis. Those are all contributing to our swab clinics remaining in the, we haven't been below a case count in terms of, sorry, not a case count, but swabbing requirements where there's been less than 1,000 people swabbed weekly since the new year. So the numbers remain high in that. It's somewhat in the background with vaccinations taking a lot of the vaccination clinics and vaccination rollout, taking a lot of the attention away from swabbing, with swabbing tends to remain an operational pressure for the service and a need within the community that we continue to fulfill. So segueing into that, item number 5, vaccine rollout. It's still contingent on vaccine availability, as we well know and as we've heard repeatedly. However, we have partnered with allied agencies across the county to identify vulnerable populations, and where our service comes forward in this regard is we have the capability to serve the public pre-hospital, as you're well aware. And it's been identified that we can, through our community programs, attend at the residence of vulnerable populations, or we can assist in getting those folks vaccinated who have challenges in getting to a clinic. We've set up some drive-through clinics as well, and we've set up a website that's been stood up for that vulnerable population to assist them should they require transportation to any of our clinics. So again, it's somewhat twofold. We go to the people, and the people are still coming to us in the drive-through capability. Those with mobility issues are very appreciative of the drive-through capability, and they've been a success to date. In addition, the Community Services Department has applied and successfully received funding to help with some of the costs associated with transportation to some of these clinics. So that was advantageous as well. The goal of the paramedic service is to address the housebound patients first. And as I identified previously at the top of the report, at the top of item number 5, we had roughly 400 housebound and 1,200 individuals who may require some level of support to get vaccinated. The more accurate number is 390 individuals on the list who are housebound, and we're hoping to get them, through the system, if you will, by all of the means that we're providing to assist them with getting there. There are connectivity issues. There are technological capability issues as well. However, with all of the means we have in place, we tend to be getting all of those in our community who don't have access or resources accommodated, and we've been specifically earmarked for assisting in that regard. And with that, item number 6, like Ms. Sheedy before me, I will defer to Mr. Foss in regards to the Treasurer's report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Foss, please.
Thank you, Chair, and again, Health Committee members. So for the review of the financial statements, I would direct your attention, I believe it's page 52 of your package. Just give you a moment to have a look at that. Page 52 of your package would indicate that the municipal cost, our share, for running the paramedic service was budgeted at $7,798,000. which is coincidentally exactly what our actual results were for 2020 at $7,998,059 with a $0 variance. And so for those of you who are somewhat surprised by that, it is a little bit more than good budgeting on behalf of Brian and Michael and the paramedic services team. We did have to make some adjustments to this to bring this in on budget, and I'll just review those for you now. At the very bottom of the page, of course, you'll see the municipal contribution, City of Pembroke, at $1,148,000, and about 7 or 8 line items above that, you'll see a special and new provincial revenue account, and we identify that as one-time COVID. Those funds, $2,927,000 came to us in an email notification on January the 19th of 2021. So we certainly went through the entire 2020 fiscal period without the benefit of knowing that the Ministry of Health would be supporting paramedic COVID-related expenses for the year. So of the $2,927,000, we had, as I mentioned to committee before, we have been tracking all of our incremental COVID-related expenses through the payroll system, whether that would be regular earnings, sick costs for those folks who were asked to stay at home because of quarantining, et cetera, or any overtime costs related to COVID. And we tracked all of those. In total, we had $1,993,000 of salary expenditures. In addition to that, like all other departments, the paramedic service was able to record all accounts payable transactions or purchases that they made that were incremental costs because of COVID-19. And that amounted, you'll see about the middle of that financial statement, something called paramedic COVID at $911,000. Those two amounts almost used up the entirety of our subsidy of $2,927,000. We had $22,725 in excess funding after those two amounts were offset. And we applied that $22,000 against our vehicle expenses because, as you can imagine, at each one of the swabbing clinics that we had set up around the county of Renfrew, we had staff that were mobilizing there with our paramedic vehicles. Just above the provincial revenue of $2,927,000, you'll see one-time pandemic pay. So like the situation in long-term care, all frontline paramedic staff were available to access the $4 per hour special pandemic pay as directed by the Ministry of Health. And so for our staff, that amounted to $412,368. So total COVID-related funding and expenditures for the year between those two amounts, $3,339,000. Just above those two revenue accounts, I'll just highlight for your attention, we did receive $285,000 from the ministry for our community paramedic program. That came in the form of $231,700 from the Arnprior Regional Hospital via the LHIN. We also had for the Arnprior Hospital HealthLink funding in the amount of $48,035, and for the Barry's Bay Hospital HealthLink funding of $5,443. In total, that's $285,000 received for the community paramedic program. Just above that, you'll see some federal revenue that came to us for the PTSI and fatigue risk management projects. About 10 lines above that revenue number, you'll see special projects, PTSI and fatigue risk management. So we contracted to third parties for these two programs, and we made payments of $463,580. We did receive $474,000. That additional $10,000 was admin revenue that we were entitled to keep for the paramedic services program because of our administrative responsibilities for each of these special projects. Just above that funding for PSI and fatigue risk management is another federal funding stream. This was for, we had two secondments, one to the Department of National Defense and another one to Indigenous Affairs Canada. And so those were dollar for dollar salary and benefit coverage for those two seconded positions. And that program has since ended in the 2020 fiscal period. Which brings me to probably the highlight of our financial statement and the reason why we were able to come in right on budget. You'll see that we have a revenue line item identified as other agency, and that is $1,564,000 in billings that we made to Arnprior Regional Health as part of our activities related to the VTAC program. And we did bring to committee last month a special resolution which identified any surplus dollars that were not needed within the paramedic services department. We could create a special community paramedic reserve from any surplus dollars related to our VTAC activities. And so if I'll draw your attention down to the third line from the bottom, you'll see transfers to reserves of $1,881,000. That is made up of $1,142,000 of planned transfers to reserve, which is equal to our depreciation charge, and that funds our vehicle purchases for future years. So $1,142,000 goes into the paramedic equipment reserve. The difference is $738,884. And that was the surplus that we identified within the VTAC program. And we have transferred that to the brand new community paramedic reserve as at the end of 2020. We made that adjustment to equal the amount that we needed to bring the budget for paramedic services in exactly at its budget. So City of Pembroke share $1,148,000 and County of Renfrew share $7,998,000. The only other item I'll draw your attention to is the capital item. And so in the year 2020, we did purchase 3 paramedic vehicles from Demers, type 3 ambulances, each one at $177,973. We also purchased an oxygen analyzer for $10,461, 2 iStat clinical analyzers at $9,937 each, and finally a diagnostic scan tool that is used by our mechanics, and that is for our Mercedes ambulance vehicles as budgeted. I believe, Chair, that would be the summary, if you will, for the Paramedic Services Department. At the very bottom of the page, we also have an emergency management department. We're responsible for an agreement with the Central Emergency Reporting Bureau, CERB, for the 911 service in Renfrew County, and that amounts to $49,654 per year. I'll just highlight the fact that we also received the bill from the Ministry of Health for the fire services dispatch system in Renfrew County, and we take and we charge all of those fees back to each municipality that's receiving that service. So we cover off that entire $100,332 in fire services through cost recovery to each of the associated municipalities. There's also an additional revenue where the City of Pembroke pays a portion of the CERB fee at $6,236, as well as the Township of South Algonquin. And perhaps with that, Mr. Chair, I would open for some comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Foss. Appreciate once again a very comprehensive and cogent financial report. Before we move on from that then, committee, any question, comment? I just had one, and I'm certainly acknowledge a little bit slow on the uptake, but So there are certainly within the paramedic service and within both long-term care homes specific line items that are recognized as COVID. But in fact, some of the COVID expenses are still embedded within particularly salary payroll as opposed to being identified particular. Generally speaking, then I presume that within a small margin, most of the increase of wage is due to COVID. Is that accurate, or at least mostly accurate?
No, thank you, Chair, for the question. So specifically to the paramedic services department, you know, I think 2020 was a very difficult and challenging year where the paramedic services not only had to manage their base 911 program, but also within the salary accounts, if you will, or the schedules that we have, the creation of the swabbing clinics for VTAC, as well as the community paramedic program, the original community paramedic program, and the expansion into the community long-term care program. So all of these are somewhat held together within those salary accounts. So I would suggest that, you know, the pressure that was on from a budget point of view were from these additional program expenses as opposed to the base program. I couldn't say without some pretty lengthy analysis to be able to pull all of that apart. We have identified a system for 2021 going forward. As this committee is aware, when we created the budget for 2021, we pulled all of those other special programs away from the, I'm going to call it the 911 program. And we now have separate reporting departments for the VTAC program, for the long-term care program, for the new vaccination program, and for the base community paramedic program. So from 2021 and forward, because of the size of these new paramedic sub-programs, if you will, we are now tracking all of those costs in detail on a by-department level. Much easier for us to be able to answer this similar question in 2021 and beyond than it is for 2020. But certainly they had a big management responsibility to juggle all of these variety of programs within their existing staffing schedule. And as you see, we were able to utilize about 50% of the VTAC related billing to Arm Prairie Regional Health to be able to support some of those additional costs that weren't anticipated in the budget process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Foss, and certainly recognizing the augmented role, significantly augmented role from perhaps we could refer to it as the legacy urgent or emergent response that has been typical of emergency services into the fairly unique extension of a variety of services, the long-term care, the palliation, et cetera. Where I was going specifically, and I recognize that the paramedic service will be different in that perspective from long-term care, but that there are certainly some substantive COVID expenditures or expenditures driven by the response to COVID that aren't necessarily captured within line items that are specifically identified as COVID. That was simply where I was going with that question. Anything further on the Treasurer's report, the unaudited financial report? Thank you once again, Mr. Foss. With that, then back to you, Deputy Chief Leahy.
Thank you, Chair. I believe item 6 concludes. My report, so I'm open to any questions that may be pending. Thank you.
Thank you. You scrolled ahead on me, Deputy Chief. I was unprepared. So with that, then, committee, we will return once again. I do appreciate the brevity, Deputy Chief Leahy. Returning to information item number 1, advancing community care paramedicine practice in response to COVID-19. Once again, certainly want to commend a big shout out to Commander Hulting and ACP Lanos, consistent with the conversation vis-a-vis the Advantage virtual conference. I think that often the County of Renfrew is ahead of the curve, is leading the curve, if you will. So great big shout out to the two paramedics with respect to the rolling out community paramedicine and palliative care into our community as well. Item number 2, the County of Renfrew AED program. Item number 3, the emergency management update. Just very briefly, as committee is probably aware, my day job, I've lost track of which is the day job, frankly, but my other job in agriculture is certainly sensitive to the disparities, the wide variation there is in precipitation. I would like to acknowledge on behalf of all of agriculture that I think, if I recall, it was March 2nd at 12:33 a.m. Conditions were perfect. Before that, they were too wet, and since that, they've been too dry. Item number 4, VTAC Testing Center update. Item 5, the vaccine rollout. Warden Robinson, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just think that I just want to acknowledge how fortunate we are in the County of Renfrew to have our paramedic service and, you know, identifying and finding the vulnerable people in our community. Oftentimes these folks are actually invisible, especially if they don't have a support system, and are often forgotten as well. So I'm just thrilled that, you know, led by our paramedic service, that all of these individuals have been identified and assisted to be vaccinated. So Mr. Leahy, please share my thoughts with the rest of the group.
Through you, Chair, thank you for your comments, Warden Robinson. I certainly will, and we were well positioned. You know, an unforeseen benefit of our earlier community paramedic program rollout allowed us to easily identify those in the community who were vulnerable. So thank you again for your comments, and I will pass that along.
Thank you very much absolutely for those comments, and certainly going to echo the comments of the warden. In addition to serving, to being patient-centered and to serving our community, it is also important to recognize the vaccine hesitancy, and I will differentiate hesitancy from skepticism. The more available, the more accessible that the vaccines are to our community, the more the uptake is, and it is certainly part of the response to the pandemic of recognizing, perhaps it has become trite at this point, but the all in it together, it is of little value if the lifeboat at the front is out of the water, if the lifeboat at the back is full of holes. Everyone, or the vast majority, to reach that herd health is so vitally important that extending the offering out into the community, and I know that Ms. Sheedy had even acknowledged in a conversation earlier this week or last week, that even within the long-term care homes, when the clinics were set up in-house, on-site, the uptake actually had increased. So it is demonstrating that making it more available, more accessible, is contributing towards that goal of herd immunity. So thank you, Deputy Chief Leahy. Item 6, then, the Treasurer's. Councillor Murphy. This is item 5, I presume.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just on top of what the warden said, this is incredible, and something that we were so worried about, you know, as the vaccine was rolling out. Just one question to Deputy Chief. You indicated that by April 12th, most of them had had their first dose. This larger list of people, are they priority now, or are we talking like a month or 2 months from now? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. Through your chair to Councillor Murphy, the larger number had different needs. However, they are prioritized as well, so we can move to them. We wanted to get the in-home population first. Those are really people who had no capability to leave their residences to get to a clinic. So therefore, we wanted to get that vulnerable population accommodated first, which we were successful with. But yes, to answer your question, the larger number are now rolling through as well, because they've always had the eligibility. It was our decision to get to the housebound initially. Thank you.
Thank you. Once more, I want to make sure that I'm seeing everyone. Any further questions on item 5? I see none. Moving on then to the Treasurer's report. Item number 6. Any further question, comment, discussion? I see none. With that then, can I have a motion to accept the Emergency Services report? Moved by Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Grills. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I will return to the agenda. Item number 9 is the Board of Health minutes. Sorry, item 8. I jumped right over that. None at time of mailing. Has that changed subsequent to the mailing, Mr. Morrow?
No, sir, it has not. There is no administration report.
All right, thank you. With that, then we will go to item number 9, the Board of Health minutes of February 23rd, 2021, found on page 53 of your agenda packages. Any question, comment, discussion? Warden Robinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I read through the minutes and I'm looking at resolution number 8, which is on page 59. Asking about procurement policy processes being followed. That's always a red flag for me. I'm wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Warden Robinson. I'm scrolling to that page. Yeah, I'll just bring to committee's attention with respect to the relocation initiative from the Board of Health, moving to 141 Lake Street. And as it is, I can certainly attest to the fact that the health unit is moved in to 141 Lake Street. That is the headquarters now moving forward. Certainly through the renovation process, as committee is certainly very much aware, the pandemic made for some challenging issues moving forward, particularly of a project of this scale. It is what I can suggest at this point was that there were some procurements that were approved over the course of 2020 as part of the renovation project that required the approval of the Board of Health. That I am uncertain. I have not seen the actual purchase orders, so I cannot attest to the process, how they were authorized. That this was simply an intent to bring these back to the board for post hoc approval, certainly in a very involved renovation project. And what I was seeking, you will note that I am the mover of this resolution. What was presented to the Board of Health were just amounts and the names of the recipients of those procurements. And what I was seeking in this motion was simply to have some more background contextual information with respect to what was the nature of the procurement, whether by means of tender, request for proposal, request for quotation, et cetera, how many bidders there were to have been able to, as you are aware, as committee is aware from the procurement process at the County of Renfrew, all of the information that is presented to make an informed decision on approving each and all of those procurements that did require the approval from the Board of Health. That is what the nature of the information being sought in that particular resolution. But certainly the committee will note that that intent to have that information brought forward to the board was defeated. Yes, Warden Robinson.
Thank you. So that was, it just seems like a reasonable request. So that's why I stopped at that, wondering, you know, I was surprised it didn't pass. It seems reasonable. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. It certainly seemed eminently reasonable when I moved it as well. And you will note also Councillor Emo had seconded that motion. It was simply to be able to make an informed decision. Of course, these procurements had proceeded. The purchases were made. There was no undoing those, but just in terms of meeting the fiduciary obligation, whether it is the Board of Health, whether it is the Council for the County of Renfrew, or whether it is the Council for the City of Pembroke, there are particular procurement procedures that each of us follow or are presented to follow. And that was simply what I was seeking in this initiative, was to be able to have that information to make an informed decision. It did seem eminently reasonable. It was not supported by the Board of Health. Anything further? Councillor Murphy.
Just of note, I also supported your motion.
Yeah, thank you. There was a request for a recorded vote, as committee will see. In fact, it was somewhat surprising. If you just go back one page to Resolution 6, you will note that the first motion that I had introduced was simply to sever this item from the Resources Committee report, to be able to consider it separately, which I had heretofore viewed as essentially housekeeping, simply an etiquette process. You will also note that because the Board of Health did not see fit to sever it from the report, ultimately it left the same parties, that is Board of Health members, Emo, Murphy, and myself, unable to support the report of the Resources Committee as a whole. And then ultimately those same parties, the flipping from one side of the recorded vote ledger to the other side was consistent throughout. So I certainly acknowledge that I'm in agreement with you, Warden Robinson, that I believe that this was simply a reasonable, eminently reasonable request to have this information, but was not supported by the board. Anything further? I don't know, Councillor Emo.
Thank you. Yeah, it sometimes the board moves with glacial speed. I suspect there will be a realization in the next little while, and there'll be a more complete report offered. And if not, I have confidence in Councillor Donoghue and Councillor Murphy and Councillor Rieger and myself having enough knowledge about procedural bylaws and process to bring it back a few more times and chip away at it until we get a comfortable level of reporting on it. So stay tuned. I think you'll see eventually a report that brings some awareness to how it happened. Nobody's suggesting anything untoward happened. It's just a matter of making sure we offer adequate explanation for the expenditure of monies that are both municipal and provincial.
Thank you, Councillor Emo. Mr. Morrow, do we, this is an information item, of course, to committee. Do we accept or receive this by resolution?
We have been passing a motion receiving the Health Committee minutes as of late.
Okay, thank you. Then I would seek a resolution to receive the Board of Health minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 meeting. Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. Any further question, comment, discussion? Councillor Emo.
Thank you. Just to reassure, item number 7A to F, it's not that the it's not that the Board of Health is indifferent to those motions that came forward. What we've done is we've taken the decision to cluster them, recognizing that they are, to our opinion, central to the determinants of health, and wanted to have a more comprehensive response addressing all of those. We were getting a series of them on basic income and on sick leave, and school meals. And I think there's a total of about 12 now from various health units, and maybe one from Alpha as well. So we took the approach that we want to have a more comprehensive response ready, that we can send out should we get more motions in the future of similar nature. We can send our report in accompaniment with a resolution. So it's not a matter of being indifferent. We're just trying to be thorough and make sure that we accurately reflect the needs and the wishes of our community.
Thank you, Councillor Emo. One more time, anything further before we call the vote? All in favor? Thank you. With that, is there any new business? Is there any need for a closed meeting, Mr. Morrow?
Sorry, sir, just had to unmute my mic. No closed meeting today, sir.
Thank heaven for small mercies, Mr. Morrow. Date of next meeting is Wednesday, May 12th, 2021. And with that, it is precisely 12 o'clock. I think we are setting a record today. Health Committee, can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councillor Murphy, seconded by Councillor Doncaster. All in favor? We are adjourned at high noon. Thank you, everyone.